I think most of us have an intuitive idea of what speed is. It is the distance we cover over a period of time. We also know that velocity is in a similar line of thought, in that it is just the same as speed, but with direction. A better way of saying it is the direction in which a certain displacement is being covered over a period of time. Digest that. Make sure you understand what I mean. In here, we use displacement as our distance. So when we're speaking of speed, our way to conceptualize it is through distance. But with velocity, which has direction, we use displacement to conceptualize it. But because it's a different but similar concept, we have different but similar parts of this concept. So you can see the similarities between displacement and distance, and the similarities between speed and velocity. Now we have another concept, motion in circles. It is a type of motion and hence has its own part in the concept. In this concept, its speed, quote unquote, is simply called angular speed. Angular here is just to know that it's for circles or, curves. Just as speed is velocity in the vector motion. As the name suggests, this thing, angular speed, is simply put, the amount of angle cut by an object in circular motion. What do I mean? Hold on, let's slow down. When we're in circular motion, we make a circle, or at least part of one. For example, when making a turn in the road, it's part of a circle. A circle has a radius and a center. Let's assume the radius is the distance from the center to the object in circular motion. Let's say a car, for example. Now, as the object moves, the radius spins to make that straight line. The initial position of the radius is here, and the final position is here. There is an angle between these two lines. This is the distance in this concept that we call circular motion. It is the way an object can move, similar to how in linear motion, key concept, linear, moving a distance is the way to move, if that makes sense. This concept, circular motion, has its distance to be called the angle. Now, the so-called angular speed should be easy to guess. It is simply the angle the radius passes through over a period of time. This connection that I just explained to you took me a while to wrap my head around. We know now intuitively what angular speed is. Angular velocity is simply angular speed but with direction, similar to speed and velocity, where velocity is just speed but with direction. Direction in this concept is basically clockwise or anti-clockwise. We need to use the right hand rule to know the direction, because if something like a clock hand is moving in the clockwise motion, then if you look from behind, it can look like it's moving in the anti-clockwise direction. But with the right hand rule, it fixes that. We don't need to know this. It's just for your information. Some of us may not know this, but we actually have an equation to convert from velocity to speed, from one concept of motion to another. This is key in my explanation. This conversion from speed to velocity is speed equals to magnitude of velocity. Magnitude of velocity can be calculated easily, but my point is you can convert. Here too, we can. From angular speed to linear speed, or angular velocity to linear velocity. At our level, I don't think we distinguish between angular speed and velocity. I think they use them interchangeably. But someone please feel free to correct me. We do the conversion in this way. V equals to omega times radius, or V equals to angular speed times radius. Omega is the symbol for angular speed or angular velocity. And in the future, angular frequency. You don't need to know that. If this formula looks weird right now, don't worry, I can explain. The way I think about it is this. Arc length is a fancy word for distance along a circle. We can find this distance or arc length. The formula is arc length, which is just the distance along the circle, is equals to the angle times radius. Bear with me, I will talk about how I got this formula in a bit, but for now, I'll let you think about it. So as you may already know this formula from IGCSE or GCSE. This arc length is related to our concept of linear speed, distance, and we know v equals to distance over time. The s in this case is the arc length, theta, times r. Theta is the symbol for angle. So we would get v equals to theta times r, all divided by time. We know from before, theta divided by time is omega, which is angular speed / velocity. So we simplify to v equals to omega r. This is how I got the conversion formula. Arc length formula simply comes from the definition of what a radian is. A radian is like degrees for angles. It is, 1 radian is the angle subtended at the center of a circle by a radius and arc length of equal value. So 1 radian equals to r divided by arc length, or 1 radian could also equal to arc length divided by r. We know r doesn't change, but arc length does, as the angle gets wider. We want the values of our radian to increase as the angle gets larger, so it makes sense to put the arc length at the top. So theta, which would be 1 radian, is equals to arc length divided by r. Rearrange and you get the formula from before. We have to talk about centripetal force first before anything about centripetal acceleration or their formulas. We know from Newton's law that a resultant force brings about motion. What happens to an object when moving in a constant straight line? When you provide a perpendicular resultant force on it, it changes direction. Now, imagine how always given a perpendicular force on it. There, you now have circular motion. But once you stop giving this force, which is a resultant force, it continues into its straight path. So we need that force for circular motion. This force is called centripetal force. The centripetal force is like a box. Yes, centripetal force is like a box. Because a box, assuming it's large enough, can have anything in it. Similarly, centripetal force can be anything, from gravitational force to friction to tension, etc. F equals to ma. That is a very popular formula a lot of us know. And so because there is resultant force from that perpendicular force on that object that we just discussed, then there is acceleration. This acceleration, though is towards the center of the circle, is parallel to the direction of centripetal force. F equals to ma. To find this centripetal force, we need to find the acceleration. And depending on the context can mean different things. For example, acceleration can be gravitational field strength, g, if we're speaking of gravity's force. Or acceleration, a, can also be charge, if we're speaking of electric field forces, electric force. Acceleration is change in velocity over time. We can use the conversion formula from linear v, velocity, to omega, angular speed / velocity, that we derive. So centripetal acceleration A is A equals to omega times r all divided by t. T is equals to theta divided by omega. A is equals to now omega times r divided by theta divided by omega. It sounds weird when I say it, but look at the visuals. And this thing can be simplified to omega squared times r. So A is equals to r times omega squared. We can also use omega squared equals to v squared divided by r squared. V squared equals to omega squared times r squared. Plug it in. A equals to r times v squared divided by r squared, which is equals to v squared divided by r. Now we can use either of these centripetal force formulas to find the centripetal force, F equals to mr omega squared, and F equals to mv squared divided by r. This makes it a lot easier to remember all the formulas because you know how to derive it and you know the concepts which they're derived from my perspective. Alright, that should be it. This topic connects with many others, so it is very important that you understand this. If you're not writing A-levels, relax, and I thank you for watching. I'm really shocked that you've thought through this far, and I would love your feedback on my teaching. I tried to make this as understandable to non-physics students as I could, while keeping it short. Subscribe because I'll make more as I learn and get time. I am currently an A-level student who's learning as I teach, and using this YouTube channel as my form of refinement technique, while at the same time helping people the best I can. Subscribe to be up to date with me.